off. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm so glad you've joined us today. We're going to talk about district library formation with Clare Membiela from the Library of Michigan. And also, I believe Joe Hamlin is on from the Library of Michigan. So we're so happy to have them joining us. And by the way, I am Cheryl Mays from the Mid-Michigan Library League. I'm the director of the co-op. We have 36 members, and we're very glad to have Joe and Clare with us today. Take it away, Clare.
Okay, I'm going to actually defer to Joe first so he can introduce himself. We've had some changes here at the Library of Michigan this year. Our friend Kathy Webb, who was the state aid and penal fine queen and very involved in districts, has retired. And so Joe is taking on many of her duties. So I'm going to flip it to Joe so he can introduce himself.
Right, I'm Joe Hamlin. I'm the library data coordinator. And I'm also, like Claire said, I'm taking over a lot of the duties that we got from Kathy Webb. So I'm also working with Claire a lot more closely than we have in the past. And just wanted to stop in and say hi. I won't be here for the entire meeting, but it's nice to see everyone. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask me or ask Claire and she'll ask me, or however you want to do that.
Yeah, during the presentation, I'll be mentioning your name a lot. So
I would like to just say, if there's background noise, you may want to mute yourself. If you don't know how, just I can do it for you. But anyway, I just wanted to say that. Go ahead, Claire.
Okay. I am Clare Membiela. I'm the library law consultant for the Library of Michigan. Just to put it very simply, my job is kind of to be the law librarian for Michigan libraries across the state. I help public libraries, and actually every library in Michigan, understand legal issues that can apply to their library, and I offer them information on how they can address these issues. I also keep a list of library law attorneys, so attorneys in the state who practice library law and work with public libraries. So if your library does not currently have a relationship with an attorney who specializes in library law, I really very much recommend that you get one, because a lot of times municipal attorneys just do not have the background to understand some of the library aspects, and sometimes they matter a lot, especially for the topic we're going to talk about tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and share my slides, and I just realized I forgot to put Joe's contact information in here, so I will take care of that before I give them to Cheryl, so everybody has it. Okay, hopefully everybody sees. Do you see the slides?
Yeah. I see something, yes.
You don't see my email, I hope.
No.
Okay. Okay. Because I switch back and forth between the now I'm going to switch this out. There we go. I bring my laptop home and stuff for work, and so sometimes the settings get all screwed up when I go back and forth. Okay, so y'all should just see my one screen that says district library formation. And let's go ahead and get started. This is my contact information, and before we send these slides to you, Joe's will also be up there. I have my phone number and my email address, so do not hesitate to contact me with any kind of question or information needs you might have. This is, since we're going to be talking about some legal issues here, I always put a disclaimer in here. Although I do have a law degree, I do not practice. I cannot be your attorney, but I can provide information. So this is just my disclaimer that says I am only providing you information and not legal advice. So what we're going to talk about today is how to form a district library, and some of the things that you should consider when you are going to form a district library, as well as we'll go through some of the pitfalls that occur. So a lot of what we're going to be talking about tonight is going to center around the District Library Establishment Act. Now, in 1989, the legislature kind of updated the District Library Formation Statute, and they called it the District Library Establishment Act, which we also call DLEA, just because it's a little bit easier to say. And in the DLEA, it specifies that there are two different ways to form a district library. So you can form a district library by partnering, a library can partner with with other municipalities. So you need actually 2 or more municipalities to form a district. So, and we're going to talk more about this in a minute, but so a public library in and of itself is not a municipality. So presumably if you're a township library or a city library, then your township or city would be one of the municipalities. And then you would seek out a partner, which could be another municipality or a school district, to form that new district with. And so the one way to form it would be just 2 municipalities getting together and saying, gee, we want to form a district, both agreeing to it, both setting up resolutions, and then negotiating a district library agreement. The other way to do it is through the ballot. And that would be where 5% of the electorate in a particular municipality put up a petition or sign a petition that they'd like to have a district and submit that petition. And then the ballot question contains the, should we form a district, but also a millage. So, and there's different, pros and cons for doing it either of these ways. Most of the districts that I've seen have been formed the first way through municipalities getting together. That tends to be a little bit easier than having to go through a ballot. But if you are, for example, if you have maybe 2 libraries that want to get together and form a district, but maybe the municipalities are not on board, or one of the municipalities is not on board, one way to kind of force it would be through a ballot initiative. Because if a ballot passes, so if the ballot initiative passes for the district with the millage, then the 2 municipalities are bound together. It's kind of like an arranged marriage. They're bound together whether they like it or not. So, those are your 2 options. Now let's talk a little bit about, so what is the big deal with a district library? What are district libraries? Well, in Michigan, we have 6 establishment laws for libraries. And under those 6 laws, there are 10 different library establishment types. So in Michigan, we have 10 different kinds of libraries under 6 different laws. And I see Cheryl shaking her head there. Yeah, it is very convoluted. A lot of states do not have nearly this much. And partly that's because Michigan is one of the first states that really had public libraries, that had organized public libraries. So partly one of the things we're so strong about, which is that the state has always embraced public libraries, also can be a pain because there are some libraries in our state that are so old, they pretty much date back to the Constitution of Michigan. So it's very hard to take a library and then retroactively, change it. So that's kind of why our library laws are a little bit weird the way that they are. But district libraries are one of those 10 types. So what makes a district library other than just the law it is under is that district libraries are very independent. So in Michigan, if you're a city or a township library under PA 164, if you have an elected board, or if you have a 5-member appointed board as a city, and you have a governing board, then chances are you're PA 164. A PA 164 library is pretty autonomous from its municipality, right? But there are still some things that those libraries have to go to their municipalities for, right? They can't just independently put something on the ballot. They can't, the municipality still has to hold their money. They can't get a credit card without the municipality's assistance. So there are some things that even if, the board is pretty autonomous, there are still some things that a municipal library has to work with their municipality for. And with a district library is really what they call a quasi municipal corporation, right? So it is almost a municipality. It's just one step away from being a municipality on its own. A district library is very autonomous. It's its own its own corporation, right? So it's its own pretty much municipal corporation. It is a taxing entity, so it can levy its own millage. It can float its own bonds. It is subject to the Municipal Finance Act, just like every other municipality, which the municipal libraries are not subject to that. They are considered to be under their municipalities as far as the Municipal Finance Act goes. The district libraries will often be one main library with branches. So there'll be one main entity that kind of spreads out. And so what they do is they leverage the power of the whole. So it's kind of like you can have many small libraries that join together, and then they're stronger because they've created a bigger entity. So they leverage their larger populations, so they can negotiate for better deals. They can do a lot of things by being a larger entity that one small library might have more difficult time doing. They are governed by one board, just like every other library is, but that board is made up of participants from each of the joining municipalities. And how many board members you have and how many board members each individual municipality gets is all decided as part of the process under the district library agreement. So as you see on the slide here, some of the pros are that you have consistent services for populations across their service area. So you may have a very heavily populated area that is part of a district with a less populated area, and that means that those people in the less populated area are going to have access to the same services as those people in the more heavily populated area. So it means that overall, the entire service area is more likely to have good service and consistent service, instead of having, if you have two libraries in two separate municipalities side by side, one may be in a higher taxable value municipality where their millages yield higher, more money. So that library may have more assets and the ability to do more things. And then you have a smaller municipality where, just because of the virtue of where they are and how big they are, maybe their taxable values are not as high. And so their millages don't bring in as much money. They don't have as many penal fines or state aid. And so they can't provide the same level of service that the larger municipality can. When they join together, the assets of both kind of belong to the whole. So everybody benefits from the various attributes that each municipality brings to the table. The municipalities don't have to worry about their individual libraries. So if you're you're a municipality with maybe a smaller municipality or even a bigger municipality, and you have a library building, well, if the municipality owns that library building, now they have to worry about maintenance and overhead. Depending on how you set up your district library agreement, it's very possible that the district now can be responsible for those buildings and responsible for the supervision of the library staff, management of payroll, management of benefits. And again, all of which can be easier because now you have a bigger block of people, more employees. So it becomes a little bit easier to supply some of those benefits and manage those things. Now let's talk about, so everything has a good and a bad side, right? So some of the cons of a district library is that, again, because if you look at it from you're the district board and you look at this area that your district library covers, when you float, say, a 1 mil millage in the district, you're going to receive, because of the differences in taxable values, you're going to receive more from one area than you are for another. In other words, you could leverage the same 1% 1 mil millage in every area of your district, but this township is going to bring in this much per capita, and this township is going to bring in a totally different amount per capita. So you can have the problem that you have two patrons, each one paying a different amount to be part of the district, but receiving the same services. But the saving grace to that is they're both paying 1 mil, and 1 mil is determined by your taxable value. So some people look at that as a glass half empty, in that you're not getting consistent revenue. Another person can look at that as a glass half full, which means, people who are in municipalities where the taxable values aren't as high and maybe they don't have as much income can pay kind of a prorated amount, and everyone can still belong to the district. So I guess it kind of depends on how you look at it. When you make decisions as the board of a district library, you have to make decisions for everybody in the district. So if you have a district library that for whatever reason is heavily skewed towards municipalities that are, maybe are a little bit bigger, or maybe that you could say share, maybe have the larger burden of managing the library, the decisions they make have to be made with all of the municipalities in mind, right? You can't discount this small city over here just because your other municipalities are much larger. And a good example of that is if you look at Superior District, right, in the UP, that's a huge library, huge district, right? It covers, I think, a couple thousand miles in total. That board has to consider almost the entire of the UP, right? It can't just look at the larger portions or the larger cities or the more lucrative cities when they're making their decisions, even if there is not a representative from that area on the board, because the board is limited, right? A district library can only have, I think, 8, I think is the highest amount of members they can have for an appointed board. An elected board has 7 members. So you're limited in the total amount of board members you have. If you're a very large district and you have, 10 partners, then you have to rotate board seats. So there may be times when your municipality is not going to have a representative on the board, and you have to be assured and you have to be confident that the board is going to act in the interest of your municipality, even if you don't have a member on there. So that, that's something to consider. Because you're dealing with a contract, and sometimes because you're dealing with multiple members, and because the nature of a district library is that once it's formed, it is all tied together, right? So all assets are tied together, employees are tied into there. So everything kind of becomes the one entity. Trying to untangle that entity can be very complicated and messy, depending, on the factors and the size and how the district library agreement was set up. So, it's kind of one of those things that when it's great, it's very, very good, but when it's bad, it's horrible. So that's something to be considered too, is that withdrawal from a district library can be difficult. So once you're in, it's best if you're in it for the long haul. So this isn't the kind of step you make where you think, you know what, we'll do it. And if we don't like it, we can, get out in a year. That's probably not a good way to approach a district. And you can end up with bureaucracy, even if you start out as a small library, and then if you grow, which is really that's really kind of the goal of district libraries, is that best case scenario, you start with a small and then you get bigger, right? And you grow, like look at Kent District, right? It started smaller and it got bigger and bigger. But as you get bigger, like with any company, it gets more bureaucratic, right? In order to manage something of that size, you have to come out with more policies and more rules and more, procedures. And so again, the more it grows, the more complex it can be. And that's can be considered a downside, depending again on the culture of the municipalities forming the district and the philosophies of the libraries and librarians involved. So some other considerations are things like, if you have more than one library among these municipalities you're thinking of joining, which library is going to be the main library, right? Which library is going to be kind of the library in charge, where the director of that library is the director of the district? Will your partnership with these other municipalities cause your library to bump into a higher class? Now, library classes in Michigan are kind of germane to the state aid, right? So the more population that your library serves, the higher your library class. And we go from class 1 to class 6. So if you're currently, say, a class 3, where you have a director that requires maybe a college degree, but not a master's, and you go to a 5 or a 6 because of joining a district, or forming a district, then all of a sudden your current director may no longer be qualified to be your director in order to continue to receive state aid. Another example, which is actually kind of more common, would be if you're going from like a 2 to a 3, or where you go from a high school diploma to a college diploma, and maybe your director does not have that education. In that case, no matter how much experience they have, you would not be eligible for state aid if that director continued on. And that can be an awkward conversation. So that's something to consider when you're entering into a district. That's a question to ask yourself and to ask your staff. Now, if you're partnering and there's another library and that librarian has the qualifications, then maybe that might solve your problem. But they would have to be the director of the new district. If they don't, does your current library, are they willing to obtain that particular certification, or in the process of becoming a district? And at that time, employees have to get transferred from one entity to another. Sometimes that transfer can also be, well, we're going to have everybody reapply for their jobs. So maybe that's a time when you would have to hire a new director. So again, these are things to consider. Your staff, depending on your class size, may have to have some certain certifications. You want to make sure you read the District Library Establishment Act. And you read also the state aid applications, which goes through the process and everything that you need in order to be qualified for state aid. The District Library Establishment Act goes through pretty much the steps of forming a district, and it goes through what clauses have to be included into your district library agreement. So it's very good to read through it if this is something you're seriously considering. So what do you need to form a district? Well, the most important thing you need is you need a partner, as we started to discuss before. And with the district library agreement, with the district library establishment, the partner has to be a municipality, as I mentioned. So ultimately, even if you have 2 or more libraries that are all excited about this, their municipalities have to be willing to do this, because it's the municipality's signatures that go on the district library agreement, along with the boards of the libraries involved, or the board of the library forming the district. You can join an existing district if you want, but then that's obviously not forming a new district, that's joining an existing district. When you're looking at partners, something to consider is that if the area that you're considering, so the township or the municipality that you're considering looking at or asking to be part of a district, if they are already part of a district, things can get a little sticky. So if they are not, so there's a couple different things here. First of all, district libraries cannot overlap area, right? So if there's a district, if there's a partner already in a district, that municipality cannot also be part of your district. So neither can if you are, this happens a lot with school districts. So if you have a school district that is part of a district, and that school district is comprised of multiple municipalities, very often the school district joins the municipality as one entity. So it's the school district saying, we want to join, and they're binding in all of these municipalities with them. Each of the individual municipalities in that school district have not necessarily agreed to join the district, but they're going along with the school district because the school district has that authority to say, okay, every municipal population within our school district boundaries is coming with us to this district. So if you have a township that's bound into a district by a school district, they can't leave that district to go to another district. So that can become complicated. There is a provision in the District Library Establishment Act that permits one district to transfer population from their district to a new district. So there are, District A would have to say, okay, You know, the city of, you know, Clare, my name, doesn't want to be a part of our district anymore, but wants to join the Sherrill district, then they can, the school district can say, okay, you know what? We're going to let the city of Clare go. We're just going to say, you know what? We're going to transfer that population to the district of Sherrill. And that's kind of all done with like attorneys and stuff. But it, you know, it's something that it can be a little complicated and it can be a little political, and you have to know that, right? So it's not just, you can't just approach the township or the city government of Clare and say, hey, come join us. And they say, yeah, we were kind of tired of the other district. Because that again can cause animosity, it can cause problems. So you have to be, you know, sure that the partner that you're interested in, the municipality that you want to ask to be a partner, is free to partner with you. Just like if you're going to go have a date, you have to make sure the person you want to date isn't already married, so that you could kind of look at it that way. Or is that entity, if it's not in a district, is it being served by another type of library, right? So is it in the legal service area of a township or a city or a county library? And if that's the case, that's going to be problematic. What if, unless that library also wants to join the district? But if that other library doesn't want to join the district and just the municipality is interested, then that could also be a problem. What if they're a contracted service area? Well, if they're a contracted service area, the main issue is what their contract says, right? So if the contract they have with the other entity, with the other library, has some kind of provision that makes it difficult for them to withdraw, or has a particular time frame, like they have to notify 6 months in advance, then that could also be something that you have to be aware of when you're forming your district. So one of the main things to look at when you are considering partners is to really see what is their current situation with regards to library service. And if you're not sure how to do that, then, you know, let's say, for example, there isn't a library in that area and you don't know how to find out, you can give Joe a call, or you can give me a call, and we can tell you, we can look it up on some internal databases that we have, and we can tell you, you know, what libraries serve that particular municipality and kind of what their situation is. And so that is kind of currently now how we deal with it. A lot of times we'll get a call from the attorney who is working on a district to talk to us about, you know, what's going on with a particular area they're interested in partnering with. We can also look at school districts and tell you, okay, this school district, here are the municipal entities that make up this school district, right? Because sometimes, especially with school districts, you may have a boundary that cuts through a particular municipality. So half of the municipality is in this other district because of the school district, and then you have this rest of the municipalities just kind of hanging out there and isn't served, or is served by somebody else. So we can let you know that too, because it's possible to slice municipalities up, right? You can have a district that contains percentages of population of different municipalities, and one municipality can belong to more than one district depending on how their population is carved up. So what is a legal service area? Well, a legal service area is the population that is served by a library as part of its establishment or formation. A legal service area is pretty immutable, right? So if you, whatever the library's legal service area can't be touched by any other library or any other district. It belongs to that library. So in order for that population to join a district, that library would have to agree, and also the municipality would have to agree. A contracted service area is a population that's served by a library because of a contract they have with that municipality to provide library service. So it's not part of the legal service area, it's all under a contract. And how that population could be removed from one library and added to a district all depends on the language of that contract. Most of the time it can be done, but like I said, it all depends on the language of that contract. So school districts, and I mentioned this a little bit before, Because a school district is usually comprised of multiple municipalities, you have to be very careful about these. So that's why if the municipality you're interested in as a partner is currently in a library service because of their membership in a school district, then that is something that you want to look at carefully and talk with your attorney about. You can give Joe and I a call and we can look at the information and tell you what we know about it. But you'd also, in the back of your mind, understand that you may end up having to talk to your attorney about this, because school districts and districts formed by boundaries of school districts can have some really unusual situations that occur. Some other details to consider with potential partners. How far is the potential partner population from the closest possible anticipated district library facility or branch? So in Michigan, we have a list of unserved populations, right? One of the things Kathy Webb did is she kept a list of populations in Michigan that were unserved, where no library is serving them. And that list is kind of starting to dwindle, and we have it by county and we have it by municipality. So let's say that you look at that list and you say, oh, this population is in my county and they are unserved and maybe we'd like to join with them. But you look at a map and they're 20 miles away. So one of the things that the Library of Michigan looks at when we're looking at district library agreements is that idea of how far away is this population, because you can't in good conscience form a district with a population that's like 20 miles away and there's only one library. So you have a population here that's expected to travel 20 miles to get to their local library. So, that can be, and every situation has nuances, but in general, that is a red flag to us. That's something that we would probably question. So when you're looking at potential partners, you want to make sure your partners are realistic, right? That this is going to actually work, and the idea of providing service is going to be realistic. Does that municipality currently have a library millage, either because they are being served by another library, or is there a county library millage that maybe that particular municipality is not it doesn't get advantage from, but would if they belong to a district? So what is their millage status? Is the municipality made up of smaller entities that should be invited to the district, right? So if you're looking at a school district as a potential partner, then maybe those entities, those municipalities that make up that school district should also be approached to see if they also want to be participating members. Because you can have a district where the school district is a partner, and then municipal entities that are part of that school district are also partners. The same with counties, right? So if you are interested in partnering with a county, or you're a county that is interested in partnering with one of your municipalities to form a district, maybe consider talking to all of the rest of the municipalities in that county. And the reason why we say this is actually just recently, we've been seeing kind of a rash of municipalities that have been bound up in either library service, either via school districts or counties. And those individual municipalities are not happy. And like I said, it can be difficult to get out of that situation. And then there starts to be animosity and, complaints, and they're not, and it just kind of stirs up stuff. So it's always better to, ask around, and then the district can never say, well, you didn't have a voice. We asked you, you didn't want to do it. So, we're bringing you in. We warned you about it, but you weren't interested. So that's why you don't have board representation. Is there negative history between municipalities, right? Is long ago, was there something that happened between municipalities that caused some kind of kerfluffle that is still kind of brewing, right? There are actually plenty of municipalities in Michigan where that is the case. So when you're looking at forming a partnership, be aware that if there is some kind of bad blood between municipalities, then you want to get your district off to the best possible start. So, again, you may want to tread carefully, or, understand what the problem is and try to work around it. Is your potential partner a contracted area for another library? And if they are, how much are they paying that other library? You know, are they paying the other library anything? You know, there's lots of libraries contracting for penal fines and state aid only, which we strongly discourage, because, you know, it's difficult to have a library where some of the patrons are paying millages and some of the patrons are paying nothing for the same service. That also creates bad blood. But if you know there are contracted area, you can do that research to find out what they're paying. You can call us. Contracts are public record, and we have copies of contracts between municipalities. We should have copies of every contract between a municipality and their contracted area. And we can tell you how much they're paying, if anything. We can tell you what the penal fines and state aid were for the past year for those municipalities. So, you know, there is a lot of information you can gather on your potential partners. And that brings us to money. Money is a very important consideration in forming a district. Is your potential partnering municipality millage adverse? So do they have no millage? Are they not contributing any money to whatever library is serving them? Is it only penal fines and state aid? You can pull up their L4029 from the Michigan Department of Treasury. You just go to the Department of Treasury, and in their search box, you just type in L4029, and then you'll get back an option that if you click on it, you get a list of counties. So you pick the county that the municipality is in, and then you can actually see the L4029 for that county, for that municipality. Now, what is an L4029? An L4029 is the form that gets sent to Treasury every year by every municipality or any entity that levies a millage. So what it is it's a little form that lists all of the millages that a particular municipality is levying. It tells you what the millage is for, what law it is being levied under, what the date is that the millage was first elected, and what date the millage is due to expire. So you can tell if that particular municipality already, you know, has millages. If they have a bunch of millages, then maybe they're not as millage adverse. If they have no millages, then you can think, oh, maybe they are a little millage adverse. And if they are, then one of the top questions you may have, or your municipality may have when you go to negotiate with them, is how are we going to fund this library? How are you willing to fund this library? And then again, for yourself, how are you going to fund this district, right? If you have, you know, the reality is if your library has grand schemes to have a district and grow bigger, or have a flourishing district, or have a district because you want to be able to leverage population and maybe be able to afford things that your library can't afford now, the only way you're really going to be able to do that is with a millage. So, you know, that's something you're going to want to discuss among yourself and your partners and the municipalities. Again, what are the potential penal fine revenues for all of these possible municipalities? We can provide that information. Your county treasurer can provide that information. The county treasurers for each of the municipalities involved can give you that information. Are penal fines available? In other words, do you have a municipality that, for example, if you have, like one good example is if you have a township, it is possible in some areas to have a township library overlay a district library school district. Two districts can't overlay, but a township can overlay a district. And sometimes when that happens, you can double up penal fines. So everybody that serves them gets a penal fine. Most of the time you can't do that. So if one municipality is already receiving the penal fines for that population, you're not going to be able to get them. And that can often happen either as maybe a contract. Are there escrow funds? Do you have a municipality that has been unserved for a while? Because the way that penal fines work is every year penal fines are allocated by population of the municipality. So whether that municipality has a library or not, there are penal fines that are allocated to that population for library service. If there is no library or the population is not receiving library service, what happens is that amount of money gets put in an escrow account at the county. So when that library, or excuse me, when that population receives library service, then that money in escrow goes in total to the library that is serving that previously unserved population. So if the municipality that you are considering as a partner is currently unserved, then it's possible they have an amount of money sitting in escrow at the county that they are under. So you can call the county treasurer. You can also call us. We can tell you for sure whether or not they're served. But the county treasurer can tell you how much money is in that escrow account. And then once we have confirmation that either they belong to the district or they're being served, then Joe would contact the county and have those funds released. But in the instances where there are these escrow amounts, one of the things to consider is that if you have a municipality that has a lump of money, penal fines in escrow, depending on how much money that is, should that money substitute for a millage or other contributions that municipality should make for belonging to the district? And that is something that may be possible depending on the amount of monies in that escrow account. What are their potential state aid revenues, right? So, are you considering partnering with a municipality that maybe has a way station or a very, lucrative highway that is patrolled a lot? So, if that's the situation, then again, that can be something that, even though penal fines that's penal fines. Even though penal fines are not definitive, we can't guarantee they're going to go on forever. That's a consideration. Now with state aid, that's all population. So if the municipality has a large population, then you can calculate out the potential state aid revenues if you qualify for state aid. If the municipality you're partnering with does have a library, or if you are already kind of working with another library to form a district, does that library have contracts? And are those contracts only for state aid and penal fines? One of the things that can be negotiated and discussed is that under the new district, you can only have contracts that are equal to 0.3 of a mil of the area, or that would require the municipalities to contribute an amount of money equal to maybe a 0.3 millage or whatever the entities feel is appropriate. Keep in mind that, that 0.3 of a mil is under the State Aid Act. The libraries must have 0.3 of a mil of local support. And the way that the Library of Michigan calculates that is as a whole. So the Library of Michigan takes the library's entire income, the entire amount of money that they have each year, like their budget, the entire amount of money they receive. And then we take all of their populations, and we calculate that 0.3 of a mil for each of those municipalities or each of those populations. And then we add it together, and then we look at that total, and we look at the total of the library's income. And if the income is the same or over the amount of the 0.3 of a mil required, then we say you're good. We don't look at individual municipalities and say, okay, that one's not 0.3 of a mil, so that's not going to qualify. This one is 0.3 of a mil, so that qualifies. But if we look at those two numbers, and we say, okay, we've added together all of the support, and we've added together all of the totals of the 0.3 of a mil for all municipalities involved, and the amount of money they have in income does not equal the 0.3 of a mil total, then we start looking at municipality by municipality. And whatever municipality does not meet that 0.3 of a mil, you would not get state aid for that population. You would get state aid for the other populations that you do meet that 0.3 of a mil, but you wouldn't get the state aid for that other population that did not meet. So that 0.3 of a mil of local support is really important. And that's why we emphasize that a little bit. And that's why when you're looking at things like service contracts and you're looking at things like negotiations with other municipalities for a district, you really want to make sure that those other municipalities are willing to step up and, take on the burden of equal funding. And again, it doesn't have to be exactly the same monetary amount. It's that 0.3 of a mil percentage. Okay, now once you have partners, so the actual kind of nuts and bolts, each participating municipality and each participating library has to pass a resolution that says, hey, we want to start a district library. So that's kind of the start of the process. That's kind of what kicks it off, is that the libraries involved and their municipalities must all present these resolutions that indicate their willingness and approval of beginning the district library process. Now, I'm going to mention participating municipalities. And this is kind of a legal thing, a nitpicky thing. So the District Library Establishment Act talks about participating municipalities. And it's very important because a participating municipality in the context of a district library are those municipalities that have actually signed the district library agreement. So they're the municipalities that actually partnered together to form the district. So if you have other municipalities that kind of got caught up in the net of the district, so whether those municipalities are part of a county that's a member of the district or part of a school district that's a member of the district, those other municipalities are not considered participating municipalities. They are part of the district, their populations are part of the district, but the municipalities have no say in the district and how it's run. Only participating municipalities get to have board representation, get to be, kind of part of, if there's going to be an amendment to the district library agreement, they have to sign off on it. Only participating municipalities can join or withdraw from the district. So those are terms that are kind of important, so that as you're looking for members, these are just the kind of things you should be aware of. Okay, so now you're ready to negotiate, to start discussing your district library agreement. A district library agreement is mandated by the statute. It is the central governing document for a district library. So a district library agreement contains all of it's kind of like the charter of the district library. So if you look at like a charter of a city, the district library agreement is kind of like the charter for the district library, if we kind of continue this municipal kind of analogy. So when you're creating this document, there's a lot of important things that need to get put into it and a lot of consideration that should be made with it. So we really recommend that you engage an attorney. And part of this is because contracts in terms of law are really more of an art than a science. So from a legal perspective, two entities can pretty much contract for anything that is not illegal, right? So two people can contract for the most ridiculous thing, and it's a valid contract as long as there are certain kind of certain things that are part of the equation. For example, they're both on equal footing, right? They both kind of are equal. They both, you don't have like a higher person negotiating with someone who is kind of below them, like a subordinate. They're equal parties. Both understand each other, right? They both clearly understand what they're negotiating for and what they're agreeing to. Those are the kinds of things that create a legal contract. The actual wording of the contract is really up to the two parties. Now, the District Library Agreement, Section 4, does require that the contract have certain provisions. It doesn't necessarily provide the exact wording. And because wording, especially in law, matters, right? So contracts can be made or broken on a particular word. And that's why it's really important that you have an attorney. If you don't want to pay for an attorney to create the agreement, pay for an attorney to review the agreement before it goes to signature. Because, you know, there are things that they will suggest that might be things you haven't thought of, but that could be really, really valuable. Every participating municipality must agree to and sign the district library agreement. If during the process you have the agreement signed and then you go back and say, oh, we have to add something, now all of those municipalities have to sign it again. So it's probably a good idea to really make sure that the agreement is exactly the way you want it. And you can pass it around to the various municipalities and get, you know, edits and discussions and have them send it back. But I would not send it for signature until everybody's had a look at it and said, okay, this is the final version that we like. Your agreement can be signed on separate pages to, you know, preserve the original. So you can have the original that the first, you know, initial group signs, and then you can send a copy of the agreement with a blank signature page to the next municipality, and then send one to the next municipality, and then everybody can sign that their blank pages and send them back. So the final agreement that you submit to the state is a copy of the district library agreement with multiple signature pages with, you know, different signatures on each page. That just makes it easier. For many times it's a lot easier for the attorneys involved, so they don't have to keep going back and forth. You don't have to risk losing the one sheet that has everybody's signatures on it. So it can facilitate the process. So the district library agreement, as I mentioned, section 4 lists certain things that have to be in the district library agreement. So those things are the name of the new district, which has to include the word district, who the participating municipalities are, what are the areas covered by the district, so what are the service areas, what percentage of financial support will be provided by each participating municipality. Now, the percentage, in fair disclosure, this is not something we like to see, and usually we will question it, but it is legal. I will be totally honest with you. The percentage can be 0. We prefer it not to be 0 because obviously if you're going to have a district, it has to be funded, but legally everybody can say 0%. How the board is seated. Is the board elected? You're going to have an elected board, which is 7 members, or you're going to have an appointed board, which is up to 8 members. If you have an elected board, then you have to have a process for appointing provisional members when the district is first formed. And then those provisional members would have to be elected. It's like 140 days after the first election. 140 days are after the initial appointment of the first provisional member, but that's all in the statute. You don't have to remember that right now. How many board members? And again, that depends on whether they're elected or appointed. With appointed board members, you kind of have a choice. It can't be less than 5. It can't be more than 8, but you can decide how many you want to have. What are the terms of the board members? How many board members are allotted to each participating municipality? And that is up to the individuals involved to figure out. You know, are you going to have one municipality has 3 and each of the others only have 1? Are you going to, you know, there's many different ways to figure that out, and that is completely up to the parties involved. You can have one board member that's just kind of a floater, which is pretty common among districts that are really large, where there aren't enough board seats in order to accommodate every municipality that's a member. Now, I will tell you that people who are forming a district can't just decide to add board members. We've had that happen too. You can't just say, well, you know what, we really want more than 8. No, you can't do that. You can't say, you know, we're going to have an elected board, but we'd like to have more than 7. That's not going to work either. You have to stick to the guidelines that's provided by the statute. What is the procedure for amending the district library agreement? And an amendment requires 2/3 of the participating municipality. So every time you amend the district library agreement, every single municipality has to sign on to it, just like they did the original. How much time after your initial formation are you going to prohibit a withdrawal? And this is pretty common too. A lot of districts say 3 years. So 3 years after forming the district, nobody who signed this agreement can withdraw for 3 years, which enables the district to get solid. You know, it allows the district to get stable, and usually allows you to get your first millage. And then if someone wants to back out, then they can back out. If you are gonna, you know, what is your procedure for withdrawing from the district? Do they have to give 6 months notice? You want to keep in mind the dates of penal fines, so that, you know, you can get the maximum amount of penal fines for that year that is possible. You know, so you want to make sure, keeping in mind things like election dates and boards, you know, how much time does the district want someone to notify them before they withdraw? What is the disposition of assets of the district if the district dissolves or if someone withdraws? How are, you know, do they get to take, if they have a branch library, do they get to take that branch with them? Or does that branch remain with the district? Does all the assets in the building remain with that municipality, or does it remain with the district? Many partner municipalities that have, say, an existing Carnegie library or an existing library will put in the district library agreement that if they withdraw, their building goes with them. But many times the district will say, okay, your building goes with you, but everything in the building stays with the district, including the employees. So those are the kinds of things to work out depending on how, you know, the different assets your district has. You can also include a provision that says that the district will dissolve if a millage isn't passed, say within 2 years of the district forming, and you can give an exact year. And again, that's up to the people who are involved. That's a can, although others are musts, but that one's a can. Other things you'd want to include and think about are things like, you know, what is the process for joining a district if you have another municipality that's interested in joining on to the district? What about all of the individual, if you have more than one library involved, what about all the contracts they have? And the district, remember, the district is a separate entity from the library that exists now. So even if it's only one library and one municipality, the district you're forming is a completely different entity, right? So that means that all of the contracts, the employees, the assets, the bank accounts that are part of the existing library have to be transferred over to the district. So it's like shutting down one company and building another, opening another. And all of these things are things that would be added onto the district library agreement. Determining how you're going to maintain and who the owners are of any buildings that come into the district. So if you do have branch libraries, well, are those buildings going to belong to the district, or are they going to belong with the municipality that currently has them? But in some cases, the libraries may own them. So if you have two libraries that each own their own building and they join to form a district, well, now those buildings are going to belong to the district. So there may be parts of the agreement where you say, okay, this is going to belong to the district, but if this ever falls apart, the building comes back with us. Inventory of library assets. So again, if you have existing buildings, list of all the assets in that building as of when the district started. So shelving and electronics and furniture. Again, so this is what this municipality contributed to the district. And if we leave, these may be things they want to take back. Employee transfer leasing agreement. If all of your employees are municipal employees, well, when you form the district, they're no longer municipal employees. They're going to be district employees unless you have a separate agreement with your municipality. If you already have an employee leasing agreement with your municipality because you are providing library employees with benefits and retirement through the municipality, then that may be something you want to revisit, because remember, the district is a separate entity, completely separate from the municipalities that created it. So if you're a township library, once you are a district, you are no longer connected to your township. You are a completely separate entity. It's also possible that when you are, transferring from the a municipal library to a district, your employees, there's different ways to do this. Some district library agreements say the employees are automatically going to become employees of the district. Some district library agreements are set up so that employees have to reapply for their jobs. And this is something that you would want to talk to your attorney about, the pros and cons of each of those methods. If you are formed by an election, so if you're creating a district library agreement through the second option, which is an election, the petition, once the election is over, assuming that it passes, each participating municipality would appoint interim board members in proportion to their population. So the larger the municipality, the more population, the more board members they get to appoint. When their board, the final board, because when you're created by election, your board members are automatically going to be elected board members. So when the final board, like you have an interim appointed board, well, that becomes an elected board. All of those members have to then be elected at the next election, 140 days or more after their initial appointment. And then that board, now not the municipalities, that board now prepares and submits the district library agreement and the map of the district to the library, state librarian. Once you're completed with your district library agreement, and this is again, if you're joining with other municipalities, not with a vote, you submit them to the state library. We have 30 days to review them. Usually it goes to Randy, who's the state librarian. Usually he gives it to me and Joe. I review it according to the district library agreement and what provisions it has to have, and I mark off each one. If I see a provision that looks like it's problematic, and when I say problematic, it either might be illegal or it's, you know, what we might call untenable. It's something that looks like it's maybe like wildly out of proportion or you know, not like really not fair kind of thing. I may question it. I may ask. I usually ask if the district library agreement says there's no funding. But the fact of the matter is, unless your district library agreement is either missing something it has to have or has something really blatantly legally wrong with it, we generally will approve them. And I may write a letter that approves it that says, but you know, we are approving it with these reservations, and we'll list whatever issues we have. Usually I'll call you and say, look, we have a question about this and why'd you do it this way? So I typically will draft the letter and give it to Randy, and then he'll review it and he'll review the opinion. And if he wants changes, we make it. That happens within 30 days of the time you send it to us. And then we send you a letter back that says, congratulations on your district. How do you fund districts? Well, when you're thinking about how you're going to fund it, and I think I could be wrong because I know there's a lot of politics between municipalities, but it seems to me that this is one of the hardest parts of this whole deal is how are you going to fund your new district? Because library funding all over the state is becoming more and more difficult. So one of the best things about a district is that you are completely separate from your municipality. Your municipality no longer can, you know, bill you for administrative costs, can interfere with your funds. They're not supposed to do that anyway, but a lot of them do, because a lot of them think that they have more input into your operations than the law says they really do. I tell people that a district library is like if two municipalities got together and had a baby. That baby is the district library. So it grows independent of its municipalities, right? By law, it is its own entity. Like I said, according to the law, it's pretty much a municipality, right? So it's a very independent entity. It has its own, you know, carries its own bank accounts. It does its own investments. It's a board of a district library has a lot of power. So when you're considering how you're going to fund this district, you want to consider what are the budgets of other districts in the state that have the same class level, so the similar population, and a similar taxable value range as the district that you want to create, and see what their budgets are, and then go to their websites and see what kind of services they offer, right? So that can kind of give you an idea of what a healthy budget looks like and maybe what a struggling budget looks like. Consider the cost of running branches if you are going to be having them in these partnering municipalities, right? So if they already have a library, go to LibPass, or the Library of Michigan has a database that is where you put your state aid report in every year. In order to qualify for state aid, your library director inputs all of the statistics. Well, as board members, you have access to that database, so you can ask your library director for a password. You can contact Joe and ask him for a username and a password. You can get on and you can view the numbers of other libraries. So if you are considering partnering with another library, a municipality that has a library, and that library may be a branch, you can look at their financials in LibPass and see what is their annual budget right now, and where does that budget come from? Does it come from their municipalities? Does it come from a millage? What does it come from? Now, keep in mind that if you have like a city library under Section 1 of PA 164, they can levy a millage without a vote. And if that library becomes part of a district, they can no longer levy that millage. So there are things like that that you may see on the L 4029, or you may see in your research that is something that may be a lump of money that wouldn't apply. Consider the budget and expenditure culture of these other municipalities and libraries you're considering joining with. You may have a library that you're thinking of joining with for a district, and you notice that that library has a huge fund balance because the board won't spend any money. But the library maybe needs some money spent on it. But if you look at that from the standpoint of maybe having them as a partner, you can say, well, okay, when we join as a district, they won't have their own board anymore. It'll be a district board. And so that district board now will have say over that fund balance, and that fund balance will become part of the whole district library's budget. So it'd be possible that that money would be able to be spent to make some improvements on that other library that you see may need to be improved upon. Or you may see that you have a library that has no fund balance, has a very small budget, and a municipality that's not willing to support it. Well, a municipality that's not willing to support its own community library, how much support are they going to give to a district, right? So that, again, may be a question that you're going to want to push the municipality on. Because one of the things to be wary of is, again, looking at it just straight from like a business standpoint, if you are a library with a healthy budget and you're looking at becoming a district, and you're looking at another municipality with a library that is not in great financial shape, one of the things that you don't want is now your healthy municipality's budget to be strained by having to take care of your library and this other branch. So those are some things that also would be discussed as part of this negotiation process. On the other hand, you may find a partner that they're exactly on the same page as you. In terms of how their philosophy is with money and with budgets and fund accounts and things like that. Consider the total population. If the municipality you're looking at partnering with is way larger than yours in terms of population, then that's something else to be thinking about in terms of budget, because you're going to have to serve all those people. And depending on the size of your library and whether that other municipality has a library, there may be some planning that might have to occur in terms of, expanding your library to serve this now much larger population. So some of the ways to do this is obviously you can get a millage. When you have a millage for a district, the millage is submitted to the entire district. So it's not so much municipality by municipality as it is for your whole district. Whatever that map of your district looks like, that's where the millage would go for an election, for a ballot. It is true that depending on the taxable values in the different municipalities that your district covers, you may get differing amounts of money for, say, 1 mil, but the 1 mil would be levied, the same millage amount would be levied for everybody. A district library can levy up to 4 mils. That's more than any other library establishment's type of millage or amount of millage that can be levied. You are your own taxing entity. That means you can levy your own millage. and you can float your own bonds, determine your own millage amounts. You can also receive personal property tax reimbursements based on your millage. So now libraries receive that, and usually goes to the municipality. That amount of money goes to the municipality, and it's up to the municipality to, give the library the amount that they should get. Well, with a district, it comes straight to you. No other municipality touches it. It just goes right to the district, based again on your millage. You could require different partners in the municipalities or different partners in the district to have an appropriation, to donate or give an appropriation or a payment every year as part of the budget. And that, would be in your district library agreement. That would require X amount of money or X percentage of the budget. Again, it's completely negotiated per your partners. If you are going to do this, then I would definitely recommend that your district library agreement should also include a provision that says what happens if a municipality refuses to pay. So if a municipality refuses to pay, do they get booted out of the district? Do they get suspended from service? Are there, are their population? Is your population suspended from service? What is the ramification if the municipality says, you know what, we're not going to pay that this year, which I know happens for libraries that are not part of the district. So, it's possible it would happen for libraries that are part of the district. You could also consider an in-kind payment. Now, this would not matter for purposes of state aid if it's not cash, but for purposes of, everybody contributing to the district, if you have a municipality that gives property or lets their facilities be used for free, or gives equipment, or the municipality, say, gives maintenance on the building, say the municipality manages the branches and doesn't charge an administrative fee, those kinds of things, heat, electricity could maybe be counted towards a municipality's contribution. But all of this should be in your district library agreement. So your district library agreement, as that charter for your district, should really include all of the things that is expected of all of the partners, right? It should outline what the expectations are for each partner in terms of everything from contributing assets, contributing money, contributing board members, how those board members get added. All of that should be part of your district library agreement and should be thought out. Even, really as much of that should be thought out by you before you even start negotiating with your partner, so that you have it firmly in your mind. This is what we've researched. This is what we feel this library could handle. And this is what we feel that, is best for us. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't negotiate, y'all can't compromise, but at least you're walking to the table with all of these things well thought out. Okay, the last funding option is penal fines and state aid. And we really recommend that this is not your primary funding method. Penal fines and state aid historically were always meant to be contributory to library budgets. They were never meant to be sole funding for libraries, and they really just won't do it. If you are intending for this to be the primary funding for partners to your district, you may want to contact us so that we can give you an idea of what that funding is. That database that I mentioned earlier that has the data from the state aid applications, it's called LibPass, that your director has access to, that you can also get access to. That also has that information in it. It's not always broken out by state aid, but it is broken out a lot of times by penal fines. But again, also Joe or myself could also give you that information. You may want to check that, if you add up the penal fines and the state aid, or if you just look at the penal fines plus any other money that these municipalities get, does that equal the 0.3 of a mil required in order to get state aid? Because you won't get state aid if you can't meet that 0.3 of a mil requirement, like I mentioned before. We do not consider penal fines and state aid to be a stable funding option. And it's not a stable contracting option either, as we mentioned before. Now, at the end of the day, can we reject a district library agreement that is funded by penal funds and state aid? No. No, the Library of Michigan does not have the ability to do that. We can question it. We can state our objection to it, but we can't, we're not gonna not refuse to allow you to form a district based on that. But we may ask you to seriously think about it. Okay, so last thoughts in forming a district. Ask questions. This can be very complicated. It's hard to get it all at one shot like this. It can be very situational, depending on which partner you join with, depending on how big your library is, depending on what you want. So ask questions of me, ask Cheryl, ask your attorney, ask your library director, get as much information as you can on what you'd like to see happen, as well as what the reality is of what has to happen and what likely will happen. Gather all your relevant information and data and demographics on your partners. What is their population? What is their current funding? What is their politics? What, it's like a date, are they going to mesh with how you guys, already work? Because nothing is worse than having a library board that is against each other. So it can be very contentious. So like anything else, you want to make sure that this is going to be a partnership that works well. If you can, engage an attorney that has library law experience, not your municipal attorney, not your township attorney or your city attorney, who may be a very good attorney, but most likely does not have library law experience. And library law and establishment law is really peculiar. So you really want to talk to somebody who has experience in the ins and outs of it. And I keep a list of attorneys in the state who practice this area of law, and I'm happy to share it. You just need to shoot me an email. Determine the attributes most important to your library municipality for a district. Why are you going for a district? What is it that attracts you to be a district? What are you looking for? So make a list of all of those and make sure that those important things are communicated to partners that you're looking to maybe join with. And be realistic about your funding. Really do research into what other libraries that are similarly situated, that are districts with similar populations, what their budgets are and what they pay for things, and what are the things you want to see happen, and how are you going to make those happen. And really be kind of aware of how the funding works, with an eye towards being honest with your partners and hopefully coming to some kind of agreement, so you end up with a well-funded, or at least an adequately funded library. The Library of Michigan has a district library law manual on our website. This is a link to it, so when you get the slides, you'll be able to go into it. That goes into more detail on each of these steps that I've outlined. So that's kind of a good reference source for you. That's all I have. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. If anybody has, oh, there's my dog is home. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer what questions I can. I'll let, if Cheryl is still here, I'll let her.
Yeah,
There she
I
is.
am here and I have muted everybody, but I can, do you all know how to unmute? It's in the lower left-hand corner. So if you want to unmute and ask questions, or just ask me to unmute you. I don't think we need to throw things in the chat because there's only so many of us, and I think
Right.
some have dropped off. So questions?
Anybody have a question?
I guess I can't, I have to ask to unmute you. That's funny. Deb and Ted, I know you have questions. There you are, you're unmuted.
Okay. It's a lot to take in.
It is.
And I don't know. We will have lots of questions.
And
once
that's fine.
we look into all of this. It's kind of confusing to me. Yeah, I don't
The
know.
thing
What
is,
do you-
Claire, that most, well, everybody that's here, right, is the Marion group, right? I mean,
Mhm.
it's, so
Yes.
we had Lauren
Not-
from Big Rapids on for a moment, earlier. But these are, so we're talking very rural and very
Mhm.
small communities, Claire.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I think it's very tricky for you all, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. I think,
Our best partners are rural townships
Mhm.
that they have agreements with us where we get their state
Mhm.
aid and their penal fines, plus they give us a few $100s.
Okay.
And yet we've been spending our endowment to stay open. So you can see that while funding is our primary problem,
Mhm.
the solution looks problematic also.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that to consider here is that if you form a district with that municipality, depending on how your board is set up, because the district is its own entity, you don't need the municipality's approval to go for a millage in that area.
So are you saying that that we have to get approval of the, like township boards to join? And we would do that with some understanding of funding, but we wouldn't actually have a millage on the ballot at the same time?
Right, you don't have to. A lot of times what happens is, so 2 or more partners will form a district. The district library agreement will either say the parties are responsible for 0% funding, but that a millage would have to be, that the district will dissolve if a millage isn't approved within a certain number of years. And a lot of times they give it 2-3 years, maybe more. Or you could say that the district, everybody has to contribute a certain percentage of the funds. If it seems like that's not going to happen, you might want to go for the option that says everybody is, required to submit 0% and then go, have them agree to go for a millage. Since the district is autonomous, the municipality doesn't have to do anything for the millage. The board members that they get to appoint, would be on the board to vote for whether or not, the board will vote to go for a millage, but they don't have to, or how much of a millage. Like if the district library agreement says you have to go for a millage, then you have to go for a millage. But how much of a millage would be up to the district library board to decide. So that municipality really would not have, it's not the same as now, where you're going to the municipality and you're saying, well, we would like to have a millage, the municipality is saying no. That they wouldn't be able to say no if the library board says yes. So it might be a little easier to try to go for a millage. And even if you just go for that, 0.3 of a mil, even if you just start with that 0.3, that may be a step into the millage.
I have a question about, can you hear me? This is Janet.
Yep.
Okay, I have a question about the school as a partner.
Okay.
Because if the school is the partner, all of these townships around us are going to be a part of that.
Yes, unless they're already in another district, then they would get carved out.
Right, I get that. But I'm just wondering if that is I don't know how to even say it, a quicker, simpler solution if we did that, because then we get one entity to agree to partner with us that would then include almost all of the townships, or it will include part of all the townships. I'm not sure what part. If that might be just a more expedient method rather than, otherwise we have to go to each of these 5 township boards and get them to agree, correct?
Right. Well, there's multiple ways to do it. That's a very, if you have a school district, that's a possibility to be a partner. There's a lot of districts that are formed that way. The only issue there is just recently we're starting to get pushback from municipalities that were bound into districts because of a school district. And these municipalities are getting angry because they don't have their own autonomy to leave the district. However, that being said, there's nothing, you can still do it. The school district has the authority to do it, but in the process of doing it, you may want to, at least you don't have to go to each individual municipality, but you could send, a blanket mailing to all the municipalities and say, hey, we're doing this with the school district. If you're interested in being a participating member, give us a shout out. And if they don't get back to you, you offered. But, then there's other situations that if they are contentious, so if you have municipalities in these school districts that you anticipate will be very adverse, then that's a decision to make. You can go ahead and just do it with the school district and not talk to these municipalities and run the risk of some of these municipalities down the road giving you a hard time or maybe not voting for a millage because you did it. So it's kind of like a risk benefit calculation, but I'll say it's not an uncommon thing to do.
And the other thing that with it is important for, I think, becoming a district library is even just the board members. We don't have enough people in our little bitty village that want to be board members. We need board members, we need representation from outside the village of Marion.
Right.
We're being kicked out.
Oh, okay.
There's another meeting in here.
Oh, no, okay.
So Ted and I are gonna have to leave. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, and you'll have my contact info and Cheryl has it. So if you have anything you want to ask, don't hesitate to give me a shout out, email, call. I'd be happy to help you out.
Okay, thanks, Claire.
Will you be logging back on, or you're just done? You're done, right?
Well, we're in the library and we in the meeting room and we have to leave.
Yeah.
So we have to go outside.
Well, we'll
So
continue doing Q&A here. We're taping this, so and Claire, of course, can answer questions in the future. So
Okay.
I guess we'll talk to you later.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
That's too bad. Okay, well, are there other questions from the people that are still with us?
Oh, this is Janet, because I'm actually traveling right now. So I'm, and you're saying though, probably we would be better to go to these individual municipalities, these townships. But I like the idea that we can even start with that 0% and say, but you have to do something in the future, because we've got a couple, and one in particular that several times we have not been able to get the state aid from because they didn't make that 0.3 of a mil. So, and then the other questions I'm going to need answered are, where are those boundaries? And so that's something that I would call you particularly to get that info then, correct?
Yes. And the other thing about a district is that depending on how big it is, and like if you're talking about a school district, let's say you have 2 municipalities in the school district that don't pass the millage, but every other municipality does, and your legal service area does, then unless those 2 that didn't are very high population, your millage would likely pass anyway. And those people that voted no would still have to pay it, because the millage is passed not municipality by municipality, but as for the district as a whole.
Gotcha. Okay. So that makes good sense then. Okay. So that would help a lot, because we have some very strong municipalities that are they're doing great in giving us gifts and giving us grants and things that we've needed, and it's just a couple that are, kind of stingy.
Mhm, mhm.
So, but
Yeah,
once
I
they're a
agree with
partner-
Janet.
Okay.
And,
Okay.
and then you also have everybody paying the same
Equal,
millage rate.
yeah.
And that way you don't have the situation where you have one person paying, $100 a year and someone else paying nothing for the same service.
Well, right now, the village of Marion is at 1 mil, or maybe it's 1.5, I can't remember. But this one is giving us $500 a year total. You
Yeah.
know? I mean, that's not fair, and they're getting the same service.
Right. And I tell municipalities, I'm like, it's like you're in line at Target and you and the person in front of you are getting exactly the same item and they pay $10 for it. And then you're asked to pay 40. You would have an issue with that, right?
Right.
It's the same idea. And the only option, the only way to deal with that really is to go to the municipality and say, you know what, goodbye. If you're not going to pay, then we're not going to serve you. And that's a bitter pill for a lot of library staffs to swallow. But, when it push comes to shove, I mean, it really is a matter of, a whole legal service area ends up paying for everyone else to use the library. And that's not fair either.
Right. Yeah. Well, I would be very interested. I'll probably, I guess, through email or whatever, try to get that information then on, okay, looking at our school districts, first of all, and seeing what areas that encompasses. Because I know it's sprawled. It's very, here, there, and everywhere. But anyway.
What's the school district?
Marion High School.
Marion
Marion
High School.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, public schools, yeah. And I'm pretty sure that each one of the townships has a good part of the township in that school district. I don't know whether all of it is in the school district. So,
Right.
So those are going to be some numbers that I really want to get, because I know that we would get great support. I'm a teacher at the school district, so I know that we would get great support from them. And I mean, we provide internet service for so many kids that don't have internet access.
Right.
So after hours, after school, even though the library's closed, they're sitting in the parking lot.
Right. Yeah.
Getting Wi-Fi service. So, it's vital to our school district as well as our community. So anyway, I think that was it then. Those are the questions that I had. And I'm off to another engagement.
You're off to another meeting,
Enjoy.
Janet? All right.
Maria,
I
did
am
we
off
have-
also.
Grandson's choir concert. So.
Aw, well, that's cool.
Thank
I
you so
will.
much. I really appreciate it. And
Thank you.
I'm off also.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Have a good
All right.
evening.
All right. Thank you.
Kathy,
Bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you very much. You're very informative.
Thank you.
we
Uh-huh.
still have Kathy on. Do you have any questions?
No, Kathy came because I was invited by Lauren Perkins from the Big Rapids Community Library. I'm
Oh,
on the
you're
board.
from Big Rapids area, yes?
Yeah. And
Oh,
she said, it has come up in conversation, and the more you learn about this, the better off you are. So I appreciated being able to listen into this again and to get this in my head so that it can be discussed as a possibility at our board meeting. So I know it's late, but thank you, both of you. So
Well, thank you for coming.
we are so lucky to have Claire at the Library of Michigan and Joe, who's no longer on, but we're just so grateful, Claire, to you
You're
and,
very kind.
to the staff
Same
at the
to
Library of
you.
Michigan, honestly. And Kathy, I'm glad that you were on. That was great. And this whole thing is recorded. So if anybody else on your board wants to see it,
Right.
we'll have it in the can.
thank you, Claire. Good to see you.
My pleasure. Nice to see you too.
All righty.
Okay.
Bye.
And
Have a good
I
night.
guess it's probably time for me to stop the recording now. Okay.